Welcome. This is Tim Bertelsman. I'm with my buddy Jay Greenstein today. And Jay is, we could spend the 30-minute interview that we have together talking about Jay's accolades. Jay's the CEO of a number of companies. He runs a clinic system in the Maryland area that is highly successful. Jay's been one of those people who's been able to merge evidence-based practice with business success. Jay, in fact, is on the CCGPP. And has led that, and as well as being named one of the top chiropractors in the Washington, D.C. area, particularly for sports. Has worked with NFL teams, NFL cheerleaders. Suffice it to say, Jay is a tremendous leader, liaison to just about everything that we could imagine, and a great representative for our profession. So we're super excited to hear what you have to tell us. Jay, this discussion was inspired by a question that you had sent over a couple of weeks ago, as to what does it take to mass produce or to scale a chiropractic practice. And I think that we all know that the people who ask the questions are the ones who really have the answers. And that's why they have the answers. So tell us, what does it take to scale a practice like yours? How did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd be lying if I didn't say I have a bit of imposter syndrome here, because we have a great practice, and by many measures we've achieved some great successful things over the last 26 years. But the reason that I pose that question to you, Tim, because I highly respect your opinion, is because we're struggling to evolve our model in ways that we feel can deliver even greater value with greater financial success over time. And so I'm trying to pick the brains of as many smart people as I can find, you being one of them, to really identify those key variables that we think can drive our future success. I think now is a time when we're not in our business, that we can be working on our business, that we have the opportunity to answer some of these questions. So I think it's a dialogue. I don't know that I have all the answers, but I do have my experiences, which I'm happy to share.
Yeah, and obviously through the years, you've been one of those providers who had the foundation right, that we all have that clinical hand and business hand. And some people are really good clinically, but they don't know how to run a business. Other people aren't so good clinically, but unfortunately they know how to market what little they do have, neither of which are good for the whole team. And you've been able to put those two together. What do you think some of the most important things that we need to do in order to build a business that's franchisable, something that we could say this is worthy of scaling?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it always starts with leadership. I think it starts with the business owner and having a very, very clear vision about what they're trying to achieve. Being able to communicate that vision, that mission statement, those core values to the rest of the team, and bringing on a group of people that completely align with that core value, or with those core values or that mission statement. I mean, at the end of the day, we are probably all only as good as we are at our leadership skills and our ability to bring the right people and put them in the right seat. So for me, it's about evolving my leadership skills, and it's the things that I'm a student of the game, always trying to evolve and learn, and also making sure that we do everything we can to put the right people in the right seats around us and leverage those talents, leverage those people for their unique abilities, where they're working in flow states where we can achieve, operational excellence. So if the leader says, my vision is to be, world-class at chiropractic rehab, that's the mission, then what does it take to do that? Well, it takes, again, very clear mission statement, very clear core values, the right kind of people that are around you on the bus, and then operationalizing excellence, which is a really hard thing to do, because when you've got people involved, it becomes challenging. It's not easy.
Those humans get in the way. That initially it's fairly simple when it's just us, and we're the bus driver, as well as occupying all of the seats on the bus, that we do everything from cut the grass to bill the insurance company and treat the patients. But
exactly.
Over time, it gets harder to give some of those things away. That one of the challenges that I find in practice is that you're giving away things that you knew that you really cared about and you did well. It's your baby, and to put that in somebody else's hands is tough. What are some of the keys to managing those people? That obviously we need to attract the right people, but then we have to train them and ramp them up to speed. What are some of those keys? How have you developed such a strong team to help you do that?
Yeah, I definitely have a blessed life. My team is phenomenal. I think it starts with the interview process. If you're interviewing just based on skills alone, I think you're out of luck. I've made those mistakes, and it cost me dearly. financially and stress and everything else. So it's about interviewing for values and not just for skills, because ultimately skills can be trained. So interview for values, make sure that you've set very, very clear expectations. We have what's called not just job descriptions, but we have these things that are like job descriptions on steroids. And they're very, very well defined in terms of not only what needs to get done, but also how they need to get done in terms of the quality of work that's done, but also the metric that measures what great looks like. So interview well for values, make sure that you're clear about expectations. And then I think one of the third most important thing is to have regular conversations, open, honest, transparent, going there conversations with people on your team, which I think people in general, not just chiropractors, but leaders in general, they struggle with that. It's not easy to have difficult conversations. And whether I'm talking to entrepreneurs that have nothing to do with chiropractic, whether I'm talking to the chiropractor who's in my next town, those conversations can be difficult. So we have regular meetings. I have regular one-on-ones with my direct reports every single week, 30 minutes, same agenda. We have regular weekly meetings. We call them level 10s from the great book Traction, which I highly recommend everybody read, where we have, again, the same agenda, same time, same meeting every single week. And then we have monthly meetings with our doctors where we kind of bond together and talk about higher level strategic events. And then we've got quarterly meetings where we're actually planning out the next quarter and the next year. So, right people, set expectations, have regular conversations, and that'll put you on the path to success.
I think that's one of the tough things that we all face, is going from the worker to the leader and being willing to have those meetings that we know what we want. We know our expectations. We know that we're not going to let a slip of paper lie around on the table. We know that we're not going to allow a dirty front door. But unless those are all in writing, that's tough to do. You've mentioned a couple of systems that you use. I know that you are Six Sigma certified, and you're a big fan, obviously, of the EOS system. You talked about Traction, and then its companion book, Rocket Fuel. What are the big lessons from those books that we can get to help our practices become more successful, more franchisable?
I mean, Traction has many lessons in it. They talk about the 6 elements of what it takes to run a business. It's about vision, people, data, process, issues, and ultimately creating traction. I think the key components I've somewhat described, especially as it relates to people. There are just so many lessons, and I know we have a short period of time, so it's hard to say there's just one. I would just recommend that you understand your business from a more holistic perspective. There are specific variables that drive operational excellence, and the 6 that I just mentioned, I think, are critically important. I would also recommend that you understand what organizational culture looks and feels like. Your organization, your practice, it has a culture, and is it what you want? And if it's not, you do have the power to shape it and change it. And to the point that you made, Tim, about stepping out, I have a hard and fast rule that I always want people to fill my role that do my job better than I do. So I couldn't step out of being a doctor unless I found someone who was an amazing clinician who could do it better than me. Like, no ego. Like, the only way that I get to move on to my next best thing for me is to put people in roles that are better at that particular role than I am. And so, again, having a very clear, we call them position agreements, these job descriptions on steroids about what the expectation of what great looks like, and then finding those people to fill those roles allows you to step out and do other things that the entrepreneur wants to do.
So as an entrepreneur, how much time are you spending working in your business as an employee versus working on your business as the leader?
So I spend 100% of my time working on the business. I don't see patients anymore. And the vast majority of my time is spent meeting with my team and working on strategy and tactics to move everything forward towards our 90-day rocks and our 1-year goals. I probably, just for whatever it's worth, in full transparency, I probably am not the poster child for focus. I have, like you mentioned, I have several businesses that I run. And so I would encourage those who are looking to kind of take their business to the next level to really think about focusing on that one most important thing that matters most to you and not get distracted by the shiny stuff. And that's something that I've really had to work on a lot in my career, but a lot really over the last I would say 8 to 24 months, because focus is really important in achieving your goals. And if you get distracted, it can be very, very difficult.
Well, I can agree with that personally, that unfortunately most of us don't have all of those skills to do everything well. That initially we have to do that, but in order to scale, obviously the leader of a healthcare system is not able to perform every role from phlebotomist all the way up to CEO. So defining what our magic skills are, what are the things that we're best at. And it seems like one of the things that we had talked about in the past was that it really takes three people to run a business. It takes somebody who knows how to deliver the product or service very well, somebody who knows how to sell that product or service, and somebody who knows how to manage the money. So recognizing what we're good at and what somebody else may be good at, that's the tough part, buying into that vision. So what about an employee? I'll hit you with a little bit of a sideswipe question here. What about employees who can't follow that vision? That sometimes the quality of our life is defined by our willingness to have difficult talks. How do we go about those difficult talks when somebody's not completely on board with the system?
I think if you're having regular conversations with the people on your team and you're clear about your core values and how we expect people to behave, it becomes a bit easier to have those conversations, because nothing is a surprise. They should know and understand what the organization looks like, what people believe and how they behave. And when you have to sit down and have that conversation, ultimately, it may actually be better for that individual to not be on your bus anymore. Because maybe they're not in their best place, and maybe because they're not aligning with the mission, vision, or values of the organization, they're not happy either. So, I always start from a place, and I use this term a lot, I always start from a place of authentic curiosity. I'll ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling about your job role? How are you feeling about your performance? How are you feeling about the company? How are you feeling about me? How do you like working with me? I've gotten a wide range of answers, to that question. And that's okay too, because I like feedback. I like always learning how to be better. But when you start from a place of authentic curiosity, you can really understand where people are coming from. It becomes a much easier conversation to have. Maybe they're having personal issues in their life and you didn't even know it, and that's what's causing their performance to not meet expectations or exceed expectations. Maybe they're unhappy with their manager or coworker, and they didn't feel comfortable enough telling you. You just don't know. There could be so many things that are going wrong in a given situation that need to be identified first. So I start with authentic curiosity, ask a lot of questions, seek to understand, and then have an honest conversation about whether or not we both feel like this is still a good fit. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you do yourself and you do that person great justice by just being honest and transparent.
Great advice. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know that you certainly are one of the leaders in our profession on the technology forefront, that you run a company, multiple companies, from data collection to patient education, that are helping to educate providers, helping to educate the public, and really changing the perception of chiropractic. I'd love to get your thoughts on where is our profession headed? What's technology going to do to our profession? And what are the types of things that we need to prepare for as chiropractors to be ready for that and participate in that model?
Yeah, healthcare and technology and the intersection of those two things are causing monumental, rapid, exponential change. And my concern for our profession is that the level of adoption, first of all, the level of understanding, because you have to understand first, level of understanding and then the level of adoption is moving way too slow. Systematically, there should be a strategy in place for our profession to, one, understand technology, and then talk about the areas of opportunity for implementation. We know that we do great work. We've got anecdotal evidence, we've got randomized controlled clinical trials, we've got clinical practice guidelines like the ones published in Lancet and the American College of Physicians. We know that what we do works. And yet, even today, we're having this huge divide in chiropractic because of COVID about what is chiropractic's impact on the immune system. And I call these the Facebook wars. And it's kind of a disgrace because, first of all, the personal attacks just need to stop. There's no place in our profession for that. Second of all, you're only right until you're wrong, and nobody knows everything there is to know. So there becomes this dogma on both sides, and that is a little bit disappointing. And I think diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, and professional conversation around that can only lead our profession forward. But we can increase the rate of understanding by using things like big data. If we can aggregate big data sets, not if, when we aggregate big data sets and we start to and apply things like AI and machine learning and deep learning, we then tend to understand our data without needing to wait a year for a randomized controlled clinical trial to come out to tell us what works and what doesn't. It's pragmatic, real-life data. So our ability as a profession to embrace big data and use tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning can rapidly accelerate the rate at which our profession can grow, can treat more patients, and can impact other healthcare conditions other than just low back pain, because we know that's proven. Understanding what's going to happen to the future of patient experience. I mean, talk about mobile, like this is where patients are, they're on their phone. So how do we leverage mobile technologies and mobile apps to improve their experience and their engagement? I mean, we live in this digital world. We've got to start meeting the patients where they are. Blockchain technology. I mean, you know, people know blockchain, they know Bitcoin, but they don't really understand, like, what is the impact of this technology going to have? Blockchain can be the great disruptor of eliminating the middleman. And how do we as a profession eliminate the middleman that gives us so much heartache and so much heartburn? And I'm thinking of a few that have acronyms and initials right now. How do we understand how blockchain will allow patients to actually own their own healthcare records? And what will our practices and our processes inside of our practices look like when now there's an open exchange, a safe, secure, but open exchange of the patient owning their own healthcare record and us having access to it and updating it and having to be responsible for making sure that it's really, really accurate, so it tells the patient's story appropriately, so that when they open up their records and there's care coordination with another healthcare provider, or they open up their data set for research purposes, the data is good data. It's not garbage in, garbage out. It's quality data in and quality data out. I mean, I could talk about this for like an hour, but there's lots of emerging technologies. There's great companies out there. Your company is one of them. You know, creating amazing technologies and amazing platforms to help improve patient care delivery and patient engagement. These are all the things that doctors of chiropractic need to engage in order to take that next step, not just for their practices, but for the impact that we have as a whole on population health. I'm not passionate about this at all, by the way.
I think you're an example of how we need to embrace that technology, that ultimately big data is going to make our practices transparent, that those things that you and I do inside those brick walls and the plaster treatment rooms are going to become glass walls, that everybody's going to see our policies, procedures, and how we operate. And that's going to separate the wheat from the chaff, really, that we're going to see some practices thrive because they had policies that were patient-based and other practices that are going to flounder. One of the things that you mentioned, Jay, was the mobile technology. You have come up with some mobile technology. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Quick story. We just rebranded about 1.5 years ago, and part of the rebrand was just evaluating our entire business. Like, how do we get better? Kind of like how we started this conversation. It's always a question I'm asking. And so what we looked at, quite frankly, was the number of self-discharges that we had and the reasons behind those self-discharges. And the number one reason was that patients felt better. We also know from the scientific literature that the most accurate predictor of any future injury is past injury in the musculoskeletal space. So what I don't want to happen is a patient to stop treating too early. And, you know, our care plans are very small, but treating too early just because they feel better and then they're not functionally improved, and then the problem comes back and they say, chiropractic didn't work. Like, that's my worst nightmare. And so we started looking at the scientific literature. There are at least 38 randomized controlled clinical trials looking at the use of mobile applications to improve patient adherence. And so we're like, okay, so what would it look like if we built something? And so we did. We built it, and then we measured adherence over a 90-day period. We had 510 app downloaders compared to 453 who did not. And the app downloaders came in for 36% more of their scheduled prescribed visits. And the number one tile that was used in our app was the rewards tile. So we created this gamification, for lack of a better term, to engage our patients in ways that are meaningful to them. And they liked it, and they used it, and they adhered to their care plans. Now, the big missing link for us, and what we're doing next through our research institute, is we're going to start to collect patient-reported outcomes and net promoter score. So we're kind of capturing like the whole picture of, does improved adherence actually drive better outcomes? Our hypothesis is that it will. But we don't know until we see the data. So that's the next step for us from a data and research perspective. But it's been a fun journey.
That's exciting. I know that that's a popular program for a lot of people who have seen their businesses boosted as a result of it, and helps to answer questions. And I think one of the biggest things that we've all learned here today with you is even somebody who's on top of their game has probably more questions than answers, and you're continually looking for ways to how can I ask better questions. So I know that you've got another call coming up in a minute. I sure appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you, Tim.
Certainly gained some information about how to better manage my business, and probably most of all how to ask better questions. So thanks for spending your time with us today. We wish you well, and we'll hope to see you in person as soon as the COVID process is all wrapped up.
Always a pleasure to visit with you, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Same here, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you.